Welcome to Dog Day Afternoon. It's Wednesday, June 15th, beauty day outside, Quan. Another great day to make some bets. I am Gilles Gallant with FTNBets on a show powered by the FTN Network, and I'm joined as always, as I mentioned, by producer extraordinaire DeQuan Young. Quan, big night tonight. NBA Finals, Game 6 tonight. Your Warriors can close it out on Friday's show. Pretty good show. We went 2-1. We got the Kevon Looney boards prop. We got the Warriors money line prop, 2.2 units of profit, but part of the deal, and I mean, anybody who follows me on Twitter, I don't celebrate wins like I used to, just like I don't get tilted from losses like I used to when I first started betting a little over 5 years ago. Almost the act like you've been there before approach. Or I was going to mention LaDainian Tomlinson. You corrected me, but the Barry Sanders approach, by the way. And that got me thinking about celebrations in sports, the knuckle tap or the 3-point running down the court or whatever. And that just got me really thinking about you. I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, I wonder what Quan did when he would break up a play in the secondary. And that's what made me want to ask you, what was your go-to celebration when you made a play, when you were playing arena football, when you were playing football in college?
It depends on the amount of yards I had to run. In my senior year, I took back 2 kickoff returns in back-to-back weeks, and each time I was out of breath. I don't do 100 yards. So, listen, it was hand the ball to the referee and gasp for air because I knew I'd have to go back on defense pretty soon. But when I got to start playing arena, I would do wrestling celebrations. So, all right. There was one game I got a pick 6, and I did the elbow drop off the boards. I rock bottom the football and had my coach, my defensive coordinator, he counted it out. The Scott Hall kind of creep, that was my thing. And
the razor's edge.
No, just the walk where he would walk.
Okay, yeah.
So that
that's the go-to for cornerbacks, man. Is when they break up a pass, it's the razor's edge move, right?
No matter how overthrown the ball was, underthrown the ball was, if it's incomplete, it's incomplete.
Well, so I got reamed out a lot by my coaches if I would ever celebrate. So I didn't get to celebrate very often. I found I remember when I was in high school, I hit a 3 in a game. I ran that on the court doing this. He benched me right after, of course. And then another time, this is no joke, I just started playing football at 14. Played football my entire life, but this was tackle football. And football was late to come where I grew up. So because we only had so many players, I'm playing, and this again, I'm 14 years old. I weigh 130 pounds. I'm playing left guard and defensive end. So just to put that in perspective, but either way, you're 14, you're supposed to kind of weigh that amount. So defensive end, man, I get a strip sack. I'm losing my mind. Because again, we just weren't very good that first year, but I get a strip sack in the game. I run over to the sideline. I'm telling my coach, I'm like, yeah, I can't believe it. Pulled that off. Thank you. Everything else. Forget, that was a turnover. I was supposed to be on the field playing left guard. They still snapped the ball. Quarterback got pretty much sacked within the second that he snapped the ball because nobody was there at left guard to stop a defensive tackle from running through the line. So I think that probably just in my nature now where I don't really celebrate. With touchdown scores, if I'm hitting a plus 500, you're going to see that, Adam F. and Troutman plus 500, that kind of thing, because obviously I feel like touchdown scores are harder to hit than a 3 in a basketball game or break up a pass. So, and I just think as well with you got the go-to gif, the shoulder rocking gif that you've got right now that I still see every once in a while on the timeline.
I don't think I've done that since then. Yeah.
Yeah. The shoulders are just out of whack here since then. But let's see if we can find some more picks to celebrate here. We've got some picks coming up for me for Game 6 of the NBA Finals. We've got an awesome guest today. Regular guest, in fact, Quan. It's Joe Osborne with Vegas Insider, and our first inductee, Quan, into the 5-Timers Club on Dog Day Afternoon. Really good dude, one of my best friends. We're going to talk NBA Finals, Stanley Cup. We might even dabble to some World Series odds. He'll have some picks for us in the second half of the show. And before we get started with my picks, all my picks today are brought to you, as always, by Caesars Sportsbook. And if Caesars is available in your state or province, and you haven't signed up yet, now is the perfect time. Use the code on the screen, FTNBets15. That's FTNBets15. And when you sign up, Caesars will give you a $1,500 free bet just for signing up. And if you've already got another sportsbook account, that's okay. You want to have multiple sports books if you're going to be regularly betting props like K props in baseball, 3-point props in basketball, because you got to be able to line shop. You got to get the best possible odds. And from my experience, consistently, Caesars has been my go-to for finding the best plus money options. So sign up today with Caesars Sportsbook. All right, Quan, we're going to kick off the show with a little bit of a safer pick, but it's going to be a 3-point prop. We're not going to do Grant Williams again. We're not doing Jordan Poole. There's no pool party tonight. We're going with Derek White, over 1.5 3-pointers made at minus 115. Derek White, he averages 2 3-pointers per game in the finals, just under 2 3-point makes per game for home playoff games. He's also hit 2 or more in 5 of the last 7 playoff games overall, dating back to the Miami series. Also, another thing, Quan, big bounce back potential for Derek White. In the last 3 games, playoff games rather, where he's missed all of his 3-point shots, he's hit 2 or more in each of those games in the following game. So I like his chances of a bounce back here. I also think we're getting decent odds at the minus 115 spot, because after game 1, when he exploded, his over 1.5 3-point makes line was minus 145. At home, when they played at game 3 and game 4, he was around minus 145, minus 150 to have 2 3-pointers. Now we're getting it at minus 115. I feel like that's a little bit too much of a swing in odds. And the Celtics, they desperately need his shooting. The Celtics, for example, they're only shooting 34% from 3, for example, in game 5. In fact, for the series, if you look just at the game logs and the box scores, Boston's 3-point shooting has regressed each game. Their shooting percentage is just dropping each game. I'm not sure if that's the Warriors kind of figuring that out, or if the Celtics just overall just aren't shooting well. But they need secondary scoring if they want to be able to extend this game to series to 7 games. So give me the Derek White threes, over 1.5 3-pointers made at minus 115 for game 6.
I think a big thing that's going to need to happen is Tatum and Brown are going to actually need to get going at home.
Oh, man.
For
Tatum
the other
specifically.
Yeah, Tatum, I think he's going in and he's just looking to draw fouls. So if they can get, I think the home court's going to help a lot. I think if they can get some home cooking and get to the line early, it's going to open up a lot more for the Derek Whites. Al Horford, he hit a couple shots on Monday, but, not enough to sustain and keep them in the game. Like, you're going to need the Marcus Smarts and Rob Williams. Like, we were waiting for that prop to hit. These are going to be the guys on Thursday where it happens. But it's going to start with Tatum and Brown. I think the way the Warriors are defending them, putting a lot of pressure on them, but it's that home cooking. I think we always say for the periphery players, and this is a desperation game. You're going to need them to step up big. I think White's due. More so than anybody else. He went 0 for 3 last game. Hasn't been having a great series scoring, and that's all they've been talking about. So this is a nice throw in, a nice deviation from Grant Williams.
Well, and I almost was looking at Al Horford. I'm glad you brought him up, because he was about plus 110, plus 115 to have 2 3-pointers tonight, but he just hasn't been shooting the ball. And plus, I like to look at shot splits. He's about 50% right now for shot attempts, like coming from 3-point line and within the paint. So I think they need him more down low. I'm not really sure if they're going to use him as much to be able to stretch the floor, especially with the minutes that we're seeing from Robert Williams, who have increased to over 30 minutes, both in game 4 and game 5. But the rebounding aspect is kind of another angle that I was looking at, especially what we saw in game 5. So that's leading to my next pick, the beta pick. It's Kevon Looney. We're taking him to have 10 or more rebounds at plus 425. We did take this in game 4. We had way less odds at like plus 175. Part of the reason was that he was supposed to be in the starting lineup. He's actually been pushed out for Otto Porter as part of this Warriors strategy. But I still like it. I'll explain a little bit more of why I still think this is great value, because he's only averaging 21 minutes per game, Quan. But in the series, he's second on the team in rebounds and rebounding chances. So 7.6 rebounds per game, 12.4 rebounding chances per game in the finals. Both are better than Draymond Green's numbers in the series. And he plays 14 less minutes per game. Now, to shock us all, Andrew Wiggins is actually leading the team in rebounds per game and rebounding chances, but we'll put that off to the side for now. Now, game 5 for me, I think that was a bit of an anomaly for the Looney fouls. He had 3 quick fouls in the first quarter. That hasn't happened the entire playoffs. In fact, his 5 fouls in game 5 were the most he's had in any playoff game so far. Now, Also, when we won the bet in game 4, Looney didn't start. Otto Porter's been starting instead. So that's why we're getting the odds at plus 425 instead of plus 175. But I think that's actually an advantage for us because the Warriors' rotation patterns of what they've been doing, they've been subbing Porter out around the 7.5-minute mark. So 5 minutes into each quarter, every time in both the first quarter and third quarter, and playing Looney extended minutes in the second and fourth quarters. Also, another thing, Robert Williams is also picking up his minutes. So if he's going to be playing 30 to 35 minutes, you've got to have size out there, and they got to be down low because in the finals, the Celtics are winning the offensive rebound battle. They've won it pretty much in every game, rebounding totals as well. The last factor for me why I like Kevon Looney is Draymond and his foul trouble, man. Like, he's fouled out in 3 of 5 games in this series. So if Williams is playing more minutes, and if Draymond has that potential to get foul out or even get tossed, like, I mean, I could definitely see him going into Boston, getting uppity with the crowd, maybe with the refs, and getting tossed in the second quarter. That would not shock me at all. If that happens, like, Looney's minutes are just going to go through the roof. So I just think from a potential standpoint, there's just too much potential for Looney to get 10 or more rebounds, especially with how the Celtics have shot at home. Their field goal percentage is down compared to home on the road. So for me, give me Kevon Looney 10 or more rebounds at plus 425.
This bet scares me a lot because,
of course, it's plus 400.
Yeah, well, it's because the size thing that you the difference that you make between the Celtics and the Warriors. Looney and Draymond, I think we see the outcome or the effect of them going with Kevon Looney. They're the ones doing the boxing out. They got to keep Rob Williams out the paint. They got to keep Grant Williams out the paint, and Wiggins is kind of reaping the benefits. So,
which is crazy.
I think Looney 10 plus rebounds. That's a bit scary, but with more minutes come more opportunities. I think he turned it on in the last series versus Dallas, but I think this is kind of scary. It'd be something that I would stay away from. Listen, if there's a Rob Williams prop out there. And not at least for blocks or rebounds, but for blocks. I mean, that would be a play that I would kind of look into as far as just talking about big men.
Of course. Yeah. Right now, Williams, his block prop, when I was looking at it, it was at over 1.5 was like minus 200 or something like that. So if you wanted to try to get any value, you had to look at steals and blocks or the stocks prop. And even that was minus 150 for over 2.5. So that very well could happen. But it was just too much juice for me to play, especially if, he gets a little dinged up, maybe he hurts his knee or something, and then he's gone for the rest of the game or something like that. So that was just my concern. Whereas with Looney, I feel like this is almost too much of a swing. Like, it should I would say that with Williams' minutes increasing, the double-double prop does entice me. It's sitting right now around plus 450, maybe plus 500, depending on the book, for him to have a double-double again. He had 10 points and 8 rebounds in game 5. Been very solid. Just that's the one thing for me. The one thing that has been consistent has just been Looney and his presence on the floor. Like, one of the things that Zach Lowe brought up in his podcast was that when Looney and Green are on the floor together in that lineup, like, the Warriors – are like plus like 30, like, you know what I mean, per like 100 possessions or something, like ridiculous. Whereas when it's just Green on the floor and no Looney, they're actually in the minus at that stage. So just something to consider, that the Warriors have to know that. They have to know that they're going into Boston. They need as much screen setting as possible to get guys open for threes, the offensive rebounding potential because of how much Looney and Horford have been just kind of abusing them on that front, especially Jaylen Brown as well. So that was the reason why. It's just, I like the 10 plus. Obviously, when you see the odds, you're like, wait a minute, why is this 10 plus? What am I missing here? And it's mainly just because of the minute fluctuation and because of the fact that he's not starting, as opposed to when Porter is there. But Porter, to me, doesn't scare me. If anything, Otto Porter going into a game 6 in an NBA Finals on a road game, I'd be surprised if he plays more than 15 to 20 minutes. So I think Looney is going to end up having to play more of that. As long as we don't see foul trouble again, like we saw the shenanigans in game 5, I think Looney's going to get 10 boards tonight. And with that in mind, part of the reason why I like that, we're moving to the alpha pick, Quan, and we're taking a side again. And we're taking who I think is the better team. We're taking Warriors money line at plus 150. And kind of as I alluded to when talking about the Looney pick and the White pick, I think the Celtics offense, they've been terrible, especially at home, man. Like, the Celtics 3-point shooting, 36% at home in the playoffs, 44% field goal overall. Those are huge drop-offs compared to what we've seen on the road. They're 39% on the road and 48% overall. And you would think, okay, well, 3 or 4%, Gilles, that doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's like, well, in a full game context, a full game series, that's a huge amount. That's the difference between winning and losing in an NBA Finals game. And in both Celtics home games in this series, they gagged hard in the third quarter. Coming out in the second half, the Warriors were leading the Celtics. Entering the fourth quarter in pretty much all but game 3. They only trailed by 4 in that game. To me, that doesn't scream home dominance or even dominance in general by Boston. And of course, those Warriors third quarters, they're outscoring Boston by nearly 9 points on average through 5 games, 46% from 3-point on 12.4 attempts. For me, what I'm seeing right now is that championship experience, especially in the second half, to make these kinds of adjustments. So while I think it's a great run of what we've seen from Boston and their defense, again, I still give them credit as being, to me, the best defense in the NBA at this point. It's not good enough. And I think the show ends tonight. Warriors in 6.
Lifelong Warriors fan here to agree with you. I just think, listen, man, everybody's been saying Boston's been the better team, but outside of that game 1 slip up in the fourth quarter, I just haven't been seeing it. Like I
even
see
game 3, man. Even game 3, they were only down by 4 entering the third quarter, and then they obviously gagged in the fourth quarter, and Boston just went off and made key shots, and that was when they went up 2-1. You thought, okay, here we go, Boston's, but since then, in the last 2 games, and the one thing too that obviously will probably scare me, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when Joe comes on the show, like the Celtics, they just don't lose 3 in a row. Like since they turned it around kind of in December, they haven't lost 3 games in a row. So that's what we're facing right now, is that kind of trend of, well, a trend is going to bust tonight. Either the Celtics are going to lose 3 games in a row, or the Warriors are going to, close out in this spot, especially how they perform in closeout games historically since that dynasty has started in 2015. All right, so those are my 3 picks. We got the Derek White threes, we got the Kevon Looney rebounds, and we are taking Warriors money line to close out the series. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring on my man Joe Osborne. We're going to talk about the NBA Finals, Stanley Cup playoffs, a little bit of Major League Baseball as well. Stay tuned. Dawg Day Afternoon coming back 1 minute. Welcome back to Dawg Day Afternoon. I'm joined now by a dear friend, a man who takes no guff, someone who only drinks milk with the longest possible expiration date. It is Joe Osborne with Vegas Insider. Joe, welcome back to the show for the 5th time.
Joe, I got to call your ass out.
Do it. Let's hear it. What do we got?
Are you, some type of corporate sellout now, cutting your hair? I thought you were a blue-collar guy.
I know.
Turn your back on the blue-collar people?
I know. Well, the thing is nobody wants to say that I work for George Steinbrenner here at FTN. No, I'm just joking. Kevin Adams is a great dude. He did not put any pressure on me to cut my hair. In fact, it was actually my kids. My kids are just like constantly trying to like put food in my hair and stuff, man. And after a while, it just became too much, like to the point like where I'm eating and I'm getting my own hair in my mouth. Like this is how I knew that hair was too long, where I would find hair in my food and it'd be mine and I wouldn't even care. I would just be like, oh, like when you get to that level of long hair, that's the point, man, where you're like, okay, you should probably cut that because you have become way too complacent to function in society.
Yeah, it sounds very unhygienic. So I guess in that case, I don't blame you.
I had to, man. It was just one of those things, man. Drains in my toilets and bathrooms are just all clogged. So, but now, Joe, let's talk about a little bit of something clogged here. The clogged offense by the Boston Celtics that we've seen so far in this series. I don't think that's a hot take to bring that up, but I wanted to talk about the NBA Finals with you because the Warriors now up 3-2, Celtics returning home, season on the line, a legitimate must-win game compared to some of the hyperbole that we see in gambling Twitter of must-win situations. But I wanted to ask you about grit. You're somebody that I think is probably the top ranker of grit for players and just in sports, and specifically with Jason Tatum, because you tweeted something after Game 5 about his struggles in the fourth quarter in Golden State, like that he had scored 5 total points, 11% shooting. And I double checked, like just for the other games as well, to include the Boston series, like he's averaging 3.2 points in the fourth quarter, 23% shooting overall. Based on what you've seen in the playoffs, Joe, and the NBA Finals, has Tatum for you shown the grit required to consider him a superstar in the NBA?
Well, no, to be quite frank about it. Everyone's ready to anoint this guy, and he's absolutely an incredible talent, easily in the top 15 of NBA players for sure. But we've seen a couple games throughout the playoffs here where, he scored, I think he had a 10-point game versus Miami. I think he had a similar performance in one of the games versus Milwaukee.
Yep.
And you don't really see that with a guy like Giannis or even LeBron. And I put out that stat yesterday. I said, hey, the 3 games played on the road here, Jason Tatum has scored a grand total of 5 points on 11% shooting in the fourth quarter. And people say, well, he's being double-teamed whenever he gets the ball. Oh, was LeBron never double-teamed in the finals against the Warriors? Was Giannis never double-teamed in a big spot here? So you got to throw that excuse out the window. That said, he's still a very young guy. He's still only 24 years old or something, or maybe even 23.
He's 24. Yeah, you're right. But he's a young dude.
Yeah, and the Celtics are starting to show their youth here, including the rookie head coach. Right, he's getting outclassed a little bit, so that's starting to shine through a little bit. And he hasn't quite shown the grit. Like I think a guy like Luka, if he's in a spot like this, he's going to be flirting with 30 points every single time out there. Without having like that big time number 2 option, like a Jaylen Brown on the team. Yeah. So you can't use that being double teamed as an excuse.
So if we see a Game 6 and Game 7 revival from Tatum, we can revisit this and maybe see where he might move up or down in the ladder of grit rankings. But let's just talk about Game 6 specifically.
Sure.
Right now, the line, Warriors are sitting there at +4, maybe +3.5, depending on the book. +145 as well for a money line, over under sitting at 210. No game in this series has been decided by less than 10 points, Joe. So how do you think Game 6 is going to play out at TD Garden? Do you think the Warriors close it out, or is Boston going to force a Game 7 here?
Well, I'm going to go back to the well with the Celtics one more time and take them to cover the -3.5 point spread. And there's been a couple instances for the Celtics here throughout the playoffs where they've just looked god awful. And people start to turn on them a little bit. Oh, they're, like I just said, their youth is starting to show through. They don't have the offense, the 3-point shooting, blah, blah, blah. The injuries are catching up to them. And then they come out the next night and smoke the opponent, and win by double digits. And, the bounce back streak came to an end in the most previous game. But I've been playing it all playoffs here. And I'm going to play it one last time here. And by the bounce back streak, I mean the fact that they're 8-1 straight up and against the spread in the playoffs after a loss. And this is something that's been going on all season long. 14-2 straight up after a loss since late January. So they are a team that has shown the ability to be mentally tough, maybe a little bit more grit than we give them credit for, and the ability to make adjustments. I mean, the big adjustment that they got to make is those turnovers. My God, they had 18 in Game 5, which was 11 more than the Celtics. I think that's something you can improve on, especially at home. Like some of that is like, am I watching the Sacramento Kings out here, for God's sakes? Just in that fourth quarter, especially some really ugly ones. But if you dig into the stats for the series, they've been doing a lot of the small things better. They've been getting to the line more than Golden State. They've been rebounding better, blocking more shots. So, I like the chance for all those things, those little things to come together at home here. And they've been good in these win or go home situations in the playoffs so far. 3-0. Of course, they won Game 6 and 7 versus Milwaukee, and then won Game 7 versus Miami, and they were pretty good in those games. They easily won both of those games against the Bucks, and it should have been a wire-to-wire win versus Miami, but they let them back into it at the end of the fourth quarter. So, yeah, I've been saying all series long, it's a zigzag series, and it has the makings of a 7-game series. So I will take Boston to cover that number. It is a really ugly pick, though, right, at -3.5.
Well, it's a shorter line for at home, especially with the fact that these games, even though they're very close entering the fourth quarter, one team just seems to just run out of gas. That's what we've seen so far, at least from my observation. Just to piggyback onto your point, while you were talking, I just looked up just to make sure the Celtics haven't lost 3 games in a row since January. January 6th was the last time, and that coincides right around with that defensive turnaround that we saw from this team. For me, it was just about value, why I'm taking the Warriors money line. Like, I was just saying the hell with the spread and just kind of taking them at a +150 odds. They're down to +145 now, nothing crazy. But again, it was just that championship experience and just with the way the Celtics have looked at home. Now, I will say, from a grit standpoint, Jason Tatum, that game 6 that you cited against the Bucks, that's probably been the best game he's ever played in his career because he had 46 points playing in Milwaukee in, again, a must-win game, legitimately a must-win game. So I'm with you in a sense that I think it's going to be a closer game than what we see, but at the same time, I was just like, you know what? If you're taking Warriors, you're taking the money line. Don't bother taking the 3.5, especially with the way that historical record of like the team that covers the spread wins the game kind of thing. So for me at this point, it's kind of a coin flip. I kind of wish that the Celtics were maybe around the -2.5. I know that obviously playing as the home team in the finals, you can't probably put them less than -3 because everybody would just take the Celtics at that stage. But that's where we're at. So Joe and I head to head, first pick of the show. We'll find out who actually has more, find out which side here has more grit, as Joe likes to talk about here. But let's move over from the court. Let's move over to the ice.
Yeah.
My Avs, Stanley Cup Finals, they get started tonight.
Oh, what are you, a bandwagon jumper?
Oh, yeah.
You're not a fan of the Avalanche. Come on.
I know. I get called out about that quite a bit because they think that I only started becoming a fan of the Avalanche when Nathan McKinnon was drafted by them because we're both from the same area. I know what the gall on me to do that. But I've actually been an Avalanche fan since way back, since I was 4 or 5 years old. Technically, I was a Nordiques fan. They win the cup in the first year. That's essentially my team. The only difference is Patrick Waugh is on the team instead of Jocelyn Thibault, who was their goaltender the year before. And people are like, well, you just jumped the bandwagon. I'm like, this is my team. Like, I've been supporting this team for years, and I can't help it if they win the cup the first year that I'm there. Like, again, I was blessed as a kid where the Avs win when I'm like, 11, 12 years old. Cowboys win 3 Super Bowls in the first 3 of the first 4 years that I've actually watched football. Blue Jays win back-to-back World Series. So since then, it's just been downhill. But at the same time, I can't help it. And you could say that, I'm a front runner or whatever, but, that's the way it goes when you're a kid. But let's talk about the Cup Finals tonight.
Sure.
You did a pretty extensive Stanley Cup Finals preview for Vegas Insider this week about the Lightning and how they could be the first team to three-peat since the Oilers back in the mid-'80s and how they were a solid bet to win the Stanley Cup again. And I was hoping that you could sum up for us some of the betting edges that you saw for why Tampa would be a good bet in this series, outside of just the fact that you're getting them at +135 probably to win the series.
+155 actually.
Oh, right.
The other day to win the series. So yeah, I like them to get the three-peat here and to win the Stanley Cup again. Biggest edge they're going to have is the edge in net. Of course, Andrei Vasilevsky, he's out of his mind right now. He's allowed 1 or fewer goals in 7 of his last 10 games. He was, fantastic in the Cup final versus Montreal last year. And his numbers are better in the playoffs so far than Darcy Kemper. They haven't officially named him the starter, but it looks like he's going to
probably be Kemper, but you're right.
And his numbers are better despite playing better competition, in my opinion, right? And Tampa has played much tougher competition to get to this point here. That Toronto series wasn't easy. People kind of laugh about the Florida Panthers, but the Panthers had the most points during the regular. They were the best team during the regular season, and then they just knocked off the best goalie in the NHL, so they're going to see a downgrade in net in this series here. And Tampa's getting better each passing round. Like, if you dig into the stats and some of the analytics, they're just kind of improving since that series versus Toronto. So ultimately, you combine all that with the number, a plus 155, and I think this matchup is much closer than those odds indicate. So for that reason, I like Tampa, and I actually put a bet on them to win it in 6 games, to win the series 4-2, coming in at plus 600. Now, the reason I like this the most, it's pretty simple. Game 6 is going to be in Tampa Bay. They're 13-1 in their last 14 home playoff games.
Yep, that was the point I was going to bring up.
So here's my prediction of how this thing's going to go. Colorado is going to win tonight. Tampa Bay is going to win Game 2. Then Tampa Bay will win both games in Tampa Bay. Then Colorado will win Game 5 back at home. And then Tampa is going to wrap it up at home in Game 6, plus 600.
That path hurts because that feels exactly like how it would play out, and I'm really already disappointed just because, again, my team hasn't even lost. We're entering the finals first time since 2001. You know what I'll do? This is my counter. We got one trend. It's the MJ LeBron argument. Avs are 2-0 all time in franchise history in Stanley Cup Finals. The Lightning are 3-1. Edge, Colorado, right there.
All right.
Well, and again, that's
whatever
obviously
you say.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, I remember entering 2001. This is one thing, again, for anybody who was alive, who was watching this 20 years ago, when they were entering, the Devils won the Stanley Cup in 2000. Entering 2001, when they played that Stanley Cup final, Brodeur was considered the best. And I mean, technically, he's probably in most people's top 5 from a goaltender standpoint. And we won that in 7 games. Again, it was a grueling series, but again, way different team, different coaches, different players. Everything is way different. So don't put your stock into that trend just yet. But let's talk a little bit more about Game 1, specifically Lightning, Avs. Lightning right now are plus 135 on the money line. Avs coming back at minus 155 if you think the Avs win by 2 or more goals. The minus 1.5 puck line sitting at plus 175, over under of 6. You were talking about the home and away records. Avs are 5-2 at home in the postseason. Lightning are 5-4 in 9 road games in the playoffs. Not just based on your preview, but again, just the 2-time winning the Stanley Cup. The Lightning are probably going to be a pretty popular pick to win Game 1 just because they're plus money dogs. But you've got your sights set on the total for Game 1. So how are you playing this one?
Yeah, I like over 6 in this game, minus 115. And, a couple of key reasons here. Andre Vasilevsky hasn't been as good on the road as much as I like this guy. He's my pick to win the Conn Smythe. But you look at him on the road, 3 or more goals allowed in 5 of the 9 games. He's been especially bad in Game 1s of series. Game 1 at Toronto, he allowed 5. Game 1 at New York, he allowed 6. Maybe that's a coincidence, maybe not. But that's something really to keep in mind considering how good this Colorado offense has been in Game 1. So they played 3 Game 1 so far. They've scored 18 goals. So they're coming out flying in these games, and the offense has been fantastic in general. They've scored 4 or more goals in 10 of their 14 playoff games. They're averaging about 40 shots on net. Their power play has been good. The penalty kill, not so much. Now, that all said, that sounds pretty like Colorado heavy, right? But lots of unders in the Tampa Rangers series. If I'm not mistaken, I think all those games went under. But like I said, big downgrade in net for their opponent in this one, and also a big upgrade though in terms of the opponent's offense, scoring ability. So I like the over 6 there. And one spot I like, I know this is it's Dog Day afternoon. You got to have some sort of underdog pick, right? I like Tampa Bay first period. I think it's worth a shot at plus 120. Might sound like I'm contradicting myself because a few minutes ago I said I think Colorado is going to win the game, but for the first period, plus 120. Tampa Bay worth the shot here for the simple reason the Avalanche, this is a week between games for them here. So
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility they could be out of rhythm, a little rusty. Like they haven't had this long of a break since the All-Star break, right? Like teams during the regular season, at most, you'll have like a 3-day break type of a thing. So I think they could be a little bit rusty. Tampa peaking a little bit right now. So I could see them coming out flying, winning the first period, and potentially Colorado bouncing back in the second and going on to win the game.
I think it does help too from an over standpoint that they just announced that Braden Point is coming back tonight. He had 14 goals in the last year's playoffs. He had, I believe, 3 goals against the Leafs. He hasn't played since the Leafs series. So again, probably, I don't want to say that he's their most important forward, but definitely the two-way guy, like the guy that can get goals for them. Also, Nazem Kadri, one of their better defensive forwards for the Avalanche. He's going to probably be out till at least game 3 from that concussion that he took from Evander Kane in the last series. So I just think, again, there's a lot of signs pointing to an over 6 here. The fact that you can get it at minus 115 and a decent total too, because I mean, we've seen some totals in these playoffs, man, especially in that Colorado series previous to this. You were up to like 7.5, 7 goal, so once you start getting to a reasonable total at 6, okay, now we can start talking over. Once we got into the 7.5 range, I was like, and I mean, one of those games did go over anyway, but it was still, you got to play the numbers here. And if you're giving me a 6 against these two teams, especially with maybe some of the rust that the Abs can show, and also with the history of Tampa, just, I don't want to say coming out flat in game 1, but just maybe defensively not being as strong. I think it lends itself well to at least a 6-goal game. I think you're at least getting a push. The fact that you're getting it at 6 as well and not the half, I think that is also another strong bet as well. Now let's move over to the Diamond, Joe, because I wanted to talk to you about baseball because you're one of the guys that I love to follow for baseball, and talk about the Blue Jays.
Yeah,
our beloved Blue Jays. 36-25 in the standings. They've got the first wild card spot right now. Plus 900 for World Series odds, plus 550 to win the division. But they trail the Yankees by 9 games right now in the division. And for me, it's a long season. I wanted to ask you about the Yankees because right now they're probably getting the most betting and handle for World Series prices and odds, at least for most sports books that are reporting that. And we're about a third way into the season. They've only got 16 losses this year, 42 wins. Again, it's a long season, but do you think we're going to see some regression out of the Yankees at some point this year, especially offensively? Because right now they're sitting at plus 525 for the World Series odds. That just trails only the Dodgers, who are sitting there at plus 450. Do you think there's any value in even looking at the Yankees from a World Series price, maybe a AL championship at plus 250? I know we're talking about the Jays, but for me right now, I think the Yankees are probably one of the more popular stories in baseball right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you when the Yankees are going to regress right in the playoffs. When they get there, they're going to win the regular season like they always do. They're going to get their 100 wins. But we always see the playoffs come along and they tighten up a little bit. Aaron Judge and the boys, right? And Giancarlo Stanton can't take the bat off his shoulder to swing at a baseball. I like to make fun of the Yankees, but they are a little bit different this year because they got their starting pitcher is better. Luis Severino looks like an ace again. What was it, 3 or 4 years ago? It looked like this guy was going to be their number 1 for the next decade. Then he had a couple of different injuries. He looks like he's finally back. He's striking out a lot of batters. Of course, Cortez has been fantastic, and Taillon is kind of living up to his potential too. And of course, they got that guy Garrett Cole, who's going to look to bounce back here in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think there's a lot of value on the Yankees.
That's what I was getting at.
They tend to tighten up in the playoff, right? Like, good for you. Go ahead and win the regular season. It's not always the best, just like in hockey, right? In baseball, it's not always the best team on paper that goes on to win the World Series. Look at the Atlanta Braves last year with Max Fried and Charlie Morton at the top of their rotation, right? Like, I don't think anyone would call that, that's a good duo, but not like, a couple stud aces out there. So,
well, especially when they were missing Acuna and, Soroka went down earlier in the year. Like, there wasn't a lot of people talking about Braves World Series aspirations heading into the playoffs, even though they came back to win the NL East. So I hear you.
Yeah. Now that said, I'm not necessarily picking the Blue Jays to win the whole thing either. I thought that the start that the Blue Jays had, it wasn't disappointing. I'd say it was underwhelming, especially offensively. Kevin Gausman, you got to be excited about what he's bringing to the table, earning every penny of that contract so far. But as a realistic Blue Jays fan, this is still a very young team, like the Boston Celtics. Celtics fans, if they get bounced here in Game 6 of the Finals, they should be ecstatic with how that team did. That would be my same feeling for the Blue Jays. If they can make a little bit of noise in the playoffs and win a round or two and get to the ALCS, I think that's a win because of all the young players that they have on their team. That's something you can build off of. So it's not World Series or bust for the Blue Jays like it is for the Yankees or Dodgers. And maybe put the Mets into that category based on all the money that they're spending. They're having some injury issues, but yeah, things are looking up for the Blue Jays. So I feel good in general about the team.
Well, let's talk about them because They play the Orioles tonight. They split the first two games, won the first one 11-1, ended up losing a little bit of a tough one 6-5 in the second game. But we were talking about the Jays and just how they were maybe a little bit underwhelming, especially offensively to start the year comparatively to what we saw in the second half of the season where they just were tearing the cover off the ball. But they look to be hitting their stride a little bit better offensively. I think the warmer weather, I think, plays a little bit part of that. Also just, I don't want to say that Marcus Semien like drove the offense, but they had to replace that hole. And I'm not saying that Matt Chapman isn't good or that Alejandro Kirk or, Teoscar or any of these guys, they can't do that. But just Semien was special last year, the way that he was playing. But that being said, the offense is starting to pick up.
Oh, yes.
And this game against the Orioles tonight, how are you approaching it? Are you looking at, a Jays run line? Are you looking at maybe the Orioles to pull off another upset? What are we thinking here for Jays Orioles in game 3 of this series?
It's Blue Jays team total over 5.5 runs. Typically, I don't like taking the team that over on a team total of the home team because they're not guaranteed to get that ninth at bat, right? If they're up in the ninth inning. But there's just too many things lining up here. So a bit trendy, this pick, but absolutely some stats to back it up. So the Blue Jays bats are really bouncing back after a loss. So check this out. In their last 5 games after a loss, they've scored 8, 12, 8, 10, and 6 runs. So they're really coming out strong after a loss here. They've been strong in general this month here. We're halfway through June. They lead baseball in WRC plus, averaging 6.7 runs per game. And they're facing this guy, Bruce Zimmerman, for the Orioles, and he stinks, man. So the opponent has scored 6 or more runs in 7 of his last 9 starts. That's mainly because of how bad he's been. He's got a 9.57 ERA over his last 5 starts, 6.89 ERA on the road, and he's backed up by a bullpen that's not really good. You'll take a look at their ERA. It's half decent, but if you dig into some analytics, take a look at their xFIP. I think they could be in for some regression. Hopefully that comes tonight. Hopefully the Blue Jays put 6 up in the first inning, though, so I can turn her off early and throw the hockey game on, I guess, right? So, yeah, I like the Blue Jays to go over 5.5 and really fill it up tonight.
Yeah, I really found it interesting when you would look at Bruce Zimmerman's splits. So he's made, we just double check. Yeah, 12 starts, 6 at home, 6 on the road. 1 home run allowed at home games, 14 home runs allowed on the road. Like, it's just like, whoa, okay, that's a huge difference here. And just even last year, again, very limited sample size, but like one of his last starts last year was in Toronto in September. And he lasted 1.2 innings, gave up like 3 earned runs, and they yanked him right quick. So, opponents hitting 336 on him on the road, 275 at home. Again, just a lot lining up for the Jays, just for them to crack this guy and chase him out early. So I love it. I mean, again, anytime I can hear about the Jays being successful, especially with stats to back it up, I'll take up the headphone and I'll listen immediately.
Yeah, the Orioles stink. They're a complete and total disgrace. They went into a rebuild about 3 years ago when they decided they didn't want to bring Manny Machado back. And it's not going very well, the rebuild. They just throw essentially a warm body out on the mound each night and some guy to get lit up. And, to be fair, their offense has been a little bit better. I took the over on that game last night, and that hit mainly because of them roughing up Yusei Kikuchi. But yeah, the Orioles, they're not going to be competitive in that division for maybe another 5 years if they're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, they've gotten some higher draft picks and maybe but there's just been a lot of guys that were touted coming into that team. And then just, the best example, somebody who was touted and then just completely fell off a cliff. Dylan Bundy, your boy, was a huge Orioles pick. I remember they touted him as the next ace, and that did not play out well. Of course, a lot of people like to talk about the Orioles and Chris Davis and his fabulous batting average that was below 200, but yet contract that was owed $100 million over 3 or 4 years left.
Still getting paid.
Yeah, well, good for him, man. Live it up, Bobby Bonilla style, man. Get paid out. That's what we got to do. All right, so that's 3 picks from me. We got 3 picks from Joe. Joe, before you go, though, man, moving over to Vegas Insider, some things have changed for you. Can you tell the folks who are watching about your new role with Vegas Insider, where we can find your content now and a preview maybe of what you got coming up for the remainder of the summer and going into football season?
Yeah, I'm pretty psyched. I started with Vegas Insider about 2 weeks ago today, and going to be working with them as a sports betting analyst and a host. And throughout the course of the summer, I'm going to be doing daily best bet videos, mainly for Major League Baseball. And of course, I'll be covering the Stanley Cup and UFC and stuff like that. And that's all going to lead up to. That's a bit of a bridge plan. We're creating my very own show that's going to launch ahead of football season, likely mid to late August. It's going to be a midday, probably like a noon type of show with picks for that night's game, shooting the shit a little bit with the co-host, having a little bit of fun. So yeah, it's a great team over there. We got a lot of great ideas. So you're going to see a much bigger footprint for Vegas Insider here in the coming weeks and months.
I'm just thinking of like show titles for you right now.
We got to pick that already.
Well, for me, the first one was like, Let's Get Serious. Would have been a really good one. I thought that one was you stick it on the wall, you debate about it or whatever. But I'm excited to hear you unveil it in the coming weeks and months. Once that show starts to get launched, I'll be one of the people who watches it. I'm sure lots of your followers will enjoy that kind of content from you. And that's all going to be coming up here this summer from Joe with Vegas Insider. So that's all for us today. We'll be back on Friday. FTN Network, another special guest, more betting picks. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at GDawg5000. Make sure to follow him as well at JTFOZ. I want to thank everybody for watching Dog Day Afternoon. Bon chance.